Grammy nominee, a founding member of the iconic rock band Lost Tiger. He is currently on sabbatical from the band, focusing on Skyshed Observatories. So please welcome Wayne Park.
Hi everyone. I'm really glad there's not like 500 people here because I never speak in public, and usually when I'm in public I have a guitar in front of me. And so in fact in the band people say, hey, how come you don't sing in the band? I say, they pay me extra not to sing. I mean, there's a laser in here. Cool. So when they asked me to speak, be this year's vendor speaker, they said, do us a favor and don't just talk about your products for an hour. And I said, an hour? I can talk about our products for 3 hours. So I thought, what will I do about it? What will I talk about? And one of the things I thought was, this really, and Trevor, my friend Trevor and I were just talking about the fact that this truly is a golden age for backyard astronomy, meaning with all the equipment we have today and technology, we're very lucky. We're very fortunate to be around at this time. There's the mouse. But before I start, I want to honor our friend. As you know, we lost him this year, and a lot of people are talking. There's a lot of tongues this year here at Starfest. He was great. He was an early mentor to me. I used to go to Terry when I was first thinking about doing this, and asked him what he thought about it, and could I check out his observatory and stuff. He was always very supportive of us and me, and with the Sky News, they were always very supportive. And in fact, back in 2003, when we first debuted publicly the Skyshed roll-off observatory, that's Terry standing. He came down. I said, I want to get your seal of approval. So before we continue, I'd like to have, wherever Terry is now, I hope he can hear us, I'd like to have a rousing round of applause for... Probably one of the best speakers I've ever seen many times. Back to Verona, I remember storms and people talking about stuff. And my wife and I have been coming to Starfest on and off for since the beginning. Really, this is circa 1995. Yeah. People say your hair is long now. I say, yeah, there's less of it. And my wife in our little trailer, she was kind of goofing around there. She said, you're not going to use that picture, are you? And I said, yeah, I was goofing around. Of course, we had to name our trailer Little Dipper. But as you know, like everybody else, this is my old LX200. And like everyone else, I set up and tore down every night. And was the bane of my existence. And I had a nickel for every time my phone rings and people call me now and say, yeah, I just want to tell you, I drag my stuff out every night, and give me a nickel. So I looked around at the time, and observatories were expensive. They were fiberglass, they were American. And we were still sort of nomads. We weren't sure where we were going to settle yet. We were kind of in the area. In fact, we moved out here. We lived about an hour southeast of here because of Starfest in Verona. We used to come out here. We loved the dark skies, and we loved the wide open spaces, so we moved away from the big city and came out here into what, at the time, were about low Bortle 3 skies. Now they're unfortunately Bortle 4, but still, we're pretty spoiled. So, excuse me, because I got so sick of setting up and tearing down all the time and looking around, and I found there was a real void in astronomy. Like I said, there was only really expensive, and there's so many clubs in Ontario, probably more astronomy clubs per capita than I know just about anywhere else in the world. There's dozens. And I started looking around and talking to people, presidents of clubs, or vice presidents of clubs, and there'd be like 1 or 2 people in the entire club who had an observatory. And they were usually, I used to call them the financial elite, because they would have these $20,000 observatories and things. And so I saw a void, and I talked to my wife, and I said, how about and I had seen an article in the 60s when I was a kid in Sky and Telescope about a professor at UCLA who's been given the opportunity to build a roll-off observatory in Joshua Tree, the national park, state or national, he's national. It always stuck with me, and it looked like an old miner's cabin. It was like literally a log cabin that the roof came off, ugly as heck. And I said to my wife, you know, if we took that concept, and when we moved out here, we saw a local company that made sheds. And I went to them and I said, you know, I actually made a GIF at the time, if anybody remembers GIFs, in the late 90s. And I said, and I took a picture of their shed and I had it rolling on and off. And I showed them, and over a couple of years, we developed SkyShed. And now the problem with SkyShed was we can only build them in the area. And we started getting people from all over the world saying, can you come to Texas and build a shed and so on. So we created our plans, which people buy every day, even to this day. We haven't updated in years, way past needing an update, but they still work really well. And people, I'm happy to say, build from them all the time. And they do wonderful things in them. And so we started that. Again, Terry came along and gave us his, in 2003. And then before long, we were building them. This was my own in the backyard. And another thing, I always wanted to light them up. When I looked at observatories previously, they were very cold places with a little table and a thing and stuff. And I said, no, you got to make it, for lack of a better term, a she shed or a man cave. Total music, total video, plugged in. You got to make it a destination, not just something. And so here's, and I don't know if Ron's around, but we started building locally. Here's Ron and his wife Gail. We made him a nice, I think it was a 12 by 14, and he was a fledgling photographer at the time. And that's one of the things I like best about what we do, is we watch the journey of the people who own our observatories, and most of them get them because they want to do more, and they want to get into astrophotography very often. So that was the whole impetus for doing this. And of course Ron, and we watch, I mean, look at Ron's journey. Most of you, I'm sure, know Ron Breacher. And he's one of the masters of PixInsight, and he's a tutor, a teacher, a trainer, and he does fantastic. In fact, I meant to get his permission. He told me yesterday, he showed me a picture that is being used somewhere, very famous. But I let him make that, you'll hear about it soon enough. So before long, there were now sheds, as we call them, everywhere. Hundreds, now there's thousands. Here's, if you know Paul Mortfield, good friend of ours, friend of all astronomers. There's Paul and his, and so on. But again, the problem was we couldn't ship them. And we had always said, if this is successful, we'll move on to a small dome. So my friends at Astronomy Technology today, they had to have that guitar in the picture. And my wife took this picture as a joke. Like she said, give me the hero look, you know, and I did this. And what you know, of course, we sent them 20 pictures, and this is the one they used. So it's down in infinity. So we made Pod. And again, we did the usual, light it up, but make it very simple, as affordable as possible, as maintenance-free as possible, and as some of you may own them, many are approaching their 20th birthday or anniversary, and they're still going strong, and they will continue to. We knew that we make them an hour north of here, in Owen Sound, just north of Owen Sound, Shell Lake. We use the same polyethylene that they use for playgrounds and agricultural goods, which outlive us all. We don't even know how many decades the last. The company that makes pods made water troughs in the 70s, and they're still in use. So before long, we were shipping them all over the world, and there was thousands of them. And of course, astronomers were taking advantage. And again, we get to watch our owners get started and then get intermediate, and pretty soon they're doing articles and they're on magazines, and like Ron, and they're selling their pictures and stuff. So we always say your success is our success. We spend a lot of time with people, and some people think I'm crazy because I do spend a lot of time with people back and forth, but really we want you to be successful. And again, pretty soon there was thousands of them. And here's the Ottawa Club wanted to see how many people they could get in the pod. And there's Rock Mellon on the side there. They couldn't quite fit Rock. He was a little large for these. So we looked at, and we kept getting questions. Do you have a larger model? Do you have a larger model? So we made a larger model. We called it Max. This one we motorized We computerize. Gary Bennett is here in the audience. We have a team of us that work on these things together. Gary and Bart's beside him. I'll point them out later. They'll be here for Q&A. If we don't get blown off the field. So, because people like NASA and a certain company that ends with X, I say that because I have a non-disclosure that's $140,000 US per utterance if I say their name and that they use our products. But a company that builds rockets and lands with X uses our products. So NASA, MIT, Grumman Aerospace, Boeing, these are the people that we started dealing with, and they love our products and stuff. And Pod Max, of course, and of course, as usual, I had to make it look as Star Trek Enterprise inside as I could. I love that bridge of the Enterprise look. I get to it whenever I can. So by the teens, we now had 3 observatories. We still had our Skyshed roll-offs. We're no longer making them locally, but we again sell the plans and people work with their builders and so on. We had Pod and Pod Max. And one of the things that's interesting is, I need to drink water. It's okay, if I'm talking to people for a whole week. Okay, I've got laryngitis. So the interesting thing is when we started making pods, it was about 80-20. 80% visual users and 20% astrophotographers, and that slowly changed, and that number of course started at 20, but that 20% would over time become many more, and now it's the opposite. Now most people want to buy them for astrophotography, and to be quite frank, people are lazy. They don't want to go outside anymore. They want to sit in the office and turn on the computer, and they want to use their observatory. And no, I don't mean they're really lazy, because there's still enough legwork to this hobby. But we decided, Bart and Gary and I got together at Christmas of 2019, sort of unfortunately for us 4 months before COVID hit, because we had big plans. And we decided that we would create a new pod, and we call it Pod S. This time it would be motorized. It would be designed to be motorized from the ground up. It could be used manually, but it could also be used via motors, and it could be used remotely via ASCOM and other programs. You could, we wanted something now we've added in the last few weeks, we've added the ability to use it with your phone. So you use it with your phone, you can use it with Windows ASCOM. We'll introduce Indy for those Mac users and stuff later. So what we have here is the original. We decided to build a taller wall, because all of those of you who own pods know what it's like to get through the door. Some guys have what they call geyser bars for bathrooms, bolt them on the sides so they can get in there. So we designed a taller wall and this new slotted opening dome. And that meant, because they're mix and match, we now have 4 models. The original with the taller wall, the new dome with the original wall, and the new dome with the new wall. Same footprint. That was important for us, because we knew a lot of existing owners might like to put the new one in. They've already built their deck, their infrastructure, all those things. My engineer said, why don't we make it a foot larger? I said, no, they have to be mix and match. And again, we continue to make these just an hour north of here is a sort of close-up of the pod. Again, with the astronomy technology today. And by the way, if you're interested, our good friends at Astronomy Technology Today, if you're not familiar with the magazine, you really should, you owe it to yourself as an astronomer to read it monthly. It's for gearheads. It's all about equipment and astrophotography and the latest and reviews. It's $6 a year online, but contact me through our website if you like, and I'll give you a code. You know what? Go to astronomytechnologytoday.com. I have a coupon, and it's POD-S. It's Pod S, and you'll have a free subscription for the year. They gave us the cover back in January, just after we announced the new one back in December. We announced at the end of last year because we weren't quite ready yet, but we wanted feedback about, like, what do people want? Do you want the dome only to put on your old pod? What colors do you want? How many bays, as we call them, do you want? And within a month, we had hundreds of people in line. Now we've got, I think Bart said today, he saw there's something like 500 people in line. And half of those have already, well, yesterday we had an open house at our shop near here, for those who've already in line and things. And my life right now is just people trying to throw money at me. Here's $8,000. Can I get line? You know, and I say, no, I don't want your money yet. We'll wait till we got all our ducks fully in a row. I'll start taking their money in the next couple of weeks because we're going into production in September. And now the problem is, of course, we do have hundreds to make, and even if we can make 20 a month, it's going to take us a year or more to get caught up. Eventually, we hope to add more tooling so that we can make more than one. So these are photos of the new model with the new opening to give you an idea of the slotted opening. The cost is greater than the pod because there's a lot more to it. A lot more hardware. There's handlebars and rails and tracks and things that we didn't need. Again, we designed pod to be really simple. We can't be that simple when we want to motorize it. Pod was never designed to be motorized, whereas this was designed to be motorized off the top. And not only that, Bart, who's filming me right now, he'll love this. He said, I'm going to film the whole thing. Waste of time. But I can just tell you to get to the office later. How's that? Bart and Gary, our electronics team and designers, we work together as a team on everything. And we spend a lot of time talking about what if. What if the astronomer wants to do this? What if this? We try and cover everything we can think of because we're astronomers too. And we want to use our own products. So Bart has created, there's never been anything like it in Observatory. It's 2 or 3 pieces of plug and play stuff that literally, and I'm not showing it today because we just got the production parts yesterday. Not in time for us to get some nice shots. But Bart has, I keep telling people about it, it's just fantastic. If you know about motorized observatories, very often they have we have to put sensors for position and things and run wires everywhere and have all kinds of finicky sensors. Bart has designed that right into the system. It's just, and along with our software guru in Baltimore or in Maryland, James, they have put together something that's just head and shoulders above anything that's out there in any observatory in the world as far as usability, ease of use, ease of build, ease of assembly. This is my RAS 11 on a CGX in my soon-to-be Pod S. So it gives you an idea of scale. And you can see our slotted opening opens way past zenith. Now, before I just realized we're going to be here till 7 o'clock if I don't get going. So I'll just show you just a little bit more. So why do we do all this? And again, the reason is instant access. There's nothing like it. For those of you who own pods or own observatories, you know that there's nothing better than, I texted Gary the other night. I went out at 9 o'clock and at 9:10 I was focusing. Everything was up and running and stuff. And the best thing is at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're tired, it's 5 minutes and I'm back in the house. And of course, I could use my Pod Max remotely, but I like to get out of my office and get the fresh air and get under the stars and so on. But I will use my Pod S remotely, just so we can know, because that's another thing. We use our products and we try to use them even more than you will, so that we can know any little thing that you might come across. And again, here's just different users. Here's Malcolm Park, who's around here. That's a shot of his. Now, what do they do with them? They do killer solar. Sorry, I saw Andrea out there. I don't have one of hers. I should, because Andrea's one of my favorite solar. They do lunar, planetary. It's amazing. And look at the quality of these shots that astronomers are taking from backyard observatories. We see stuff like this from, I don't know, 15 years ago from Hubble or something, and now we're seeing it here. And of course, deep sky stuff. I'm into the deep sky stuff right now. I've spent the last couple of seasons on a lot of sharpless and stuff like that. Now we got back through the introduction. Let's take a look back, and that's why I say this is the golden year. So this is going to be a little bit of a history. And let's look at a typical backyard astronomer in 1906. I love Google Images. And let's call him Ralph. So Ralph, he's ready to go. Now, that isn't a sextant, but I'm guessing that's sort of altimeter, so he can say, okay, it's here, and I don't know, he can point it, but that's him. And I don't know if these guys are miners or astronomers. This looks like solar, and of course they're using plates. And there was an eclipse in 1906, so I think this might have been circa 1906. And at this point, these weren't backyard astronomers so much as they were scientists and engineers, and It was a very technical, it was still scientific. Now, by the way, I could have went back 2,000 years, you know, back to Galileo hundreds of years ago, but I started basically when photography began and the coming of the new age. This guy does not look happy. And I'm thinking it's because he's thinking, damn, I wish I was around in 2023 and I didn't have to use this crap. But they still do great things back then. And again, typical huge refractors to gather that light, and sketching, of course. It was mostly sketching. And this is a gentleman named I want to say Trudeau. This is from an exposition in 1874. He took his sketches and put them on lithographs. Sold them for $200, $199 in 1874. It's pretty, you know, it's like with, what would that be, about 20,000 today? But, so that was the state of astronomy in those days, right? And of course, then again, the box, the plate, taking plates. Now we're coming up into the 20s. Harvard, this is a woman, I can't remember her name, unfortunately, checking plates at Harvard. And this was the state of the art back then, and it was all universities and this type of thing. And again, I can't remember names. Another famous astronomer. This is also in the 20s. Got to the 30s, the rise of the clubs and the Newtonian. Mirrors started to get larger, less expensive. Look at this truss rod. You guys got a truss rod? In the 1930s, a truss rod Newtonian. The 40s, things changed a lot. I read that something like 250,000 service members of the United States Armed Forces were taught navigation and navigation by stars in the Second World War, Navy, Air Force especially. So these guys came back and they became the generation of hobbyists, railroadists, radio operators, astronomers, and other things, as they say, the greatest generation. And now we go into the 50s. Oh yeah, I want to mention too, again, the Newtonian, low-priced, larger mirrors, and this is from 1943, so this is during the war, Starry Telescope, and probably a service member back from, and it was still engineers and scientists and stuff, but it was starting to break open. We got into the 50s, I found this ad, refractors, still heavily in use as they are today. Again in the 50s, the now clubs and outreach you started to see. Here's one, it's in Spanish, so I don't know if it's in Mexico or Spain or South America, but as you can see, a Newtonian, outreach beginning. Now, one of the big changes came, Celestron. This is actually the late 50s, early 60s. And Celestron brought out their SCTs, their bucket scopes, and that really started to change things. Now we had folded scopes, much smaller, but they even had drives. Look at the exposed worm gear. I saw an exposed worm gear on one of these suckers. I went, look at that. So again, things started to change. John Dobson, late 50s, early 60s, the sidewalk astronomer, created the Dobsonian, which of course many of you may own. Make them yourself. Again, it was changing. More clubs, more outreach, more equipment, more gear. And then people took that to the, there's probably a couple here, right? 25. There's always a guy with a huge dog, you know. You know what they say about, anyway. Here's a Celestron ad from the mid-60s. If I can read part of this too. There are few possessions that the individual can aspire to which match the pride of ownership, the lasting utility and freedom from obsolescence of the Celestron 10. Hey, who bought a Celestron 10 lately? They don't make them, 9s, 11s, 14s, etc. The proud owner of his fine instrument will find it to be the center of attraction at star parties. Star parties, they were happening in the 60s, attended by amateurs and professionals alike. Think of the enjoyment you will realize when showing your friends and neighbors, youngsters, and first truly, impressive views, or their first truly impressive views of moon, planets, and remote nebulae. The interesting thing about it, and it goes on, it's great out here, it's hard to read. The interesting thing I find is, I was mentioning this to you, Trevor, $1,870. So as far as inflation goes, hey, it's not that bad to buy telescopes these days. It's going to cost you twice, maybe 3 times, but it's not going to be 10 times that much as a lot of other things were. So of course the space race in the 60s, that fed astronomy and the thirst for backyard science, and it just continued to blossom. The 70s, again, make your own or buy a Newtonian, very inexpensive, homemade Dobsonians. Johnny Carson loved his 14-inch Celestron. His good friend and mentor for astronomy, Carl Sagan. Who doesn't love Carl Sagan, or didn't? That led to Carl being able to create Cosmos, which again really changed things. It really brought science into the mainstream and popular. More changes started to happen, not at the beginning of the 80s. We were still using, and I want to mention as well, when we learned, those of us who were old enough, it was star hopping. You learned the constellations, and then you learned, and who will remember this? Andromeda is 2 over and 2 up. That's how you did it. And your friends stood in the freezing cold while you said, just give me another, I'll find it, it's just over here somewhere. And I got so tired. I had a buddy who was a skier, and so he was a big skier and I was a big astronomer, and he used to say, how can you spend your time doing this? Because he would stand there freezing while I was trying to find M51. And he just thought it was a total waste. So I really embraced the technology as it came along. And of course, another big thing of the, speaking of our dear departed friend, Terry, Night Watch. That became, it was on everybody's, if you were setting up outside, you had that on your table. And because he had all the constellations, showed you where the Messier was, and it was just full of great information. God bless him. And that was, for us, before the internet and all those things, Night Watch and the RASC Handbook were the 2 books you had to have as an astronomer. I really started to embrace the new technology where we could bolt on third-party, what do you call them? Encoders. Sorry, encoders. Teleview came out with their Sky Tour where you can plug your encoders into it, and now, at least, I mean, it was hit and miss. It gave you the right ascension and declination, and so, but you had to be calibrated. Basically, you spent the night doing this, trying to find one object by using this. And Jack Newton with his, and this is interesting, cooled cameras, dedicated astronomy camera. This is an ad from I think it was 82, maybe even late 80s. It says, I love this, accepts liquid nitrogen or dry ice. Because we cooled, I haven't mentioned too much about film, of course. People started using SLRs and cooling their film, hyperizing their film so it will be more, what's the word? Sensitive, that's it, sorry. See, I'm too far into it now, I forget what the hell I'm talking about. They started hyperizing film and stuff, and there was dedicated astronomy cameras and there was very few, again, if you had a club, you'd have 1 or 2 people doing this kind of stuff, maybe a handful, but most people were just doing sort of sight. This is when the beginning of what I call the golden age began, and the reason is, I like to say, like chocolate and peanut butter. The first go-to scopes came out, the LX200s. Now the encoders were built in. And the first S-Bigs came out, the ST4. And I remember reading a Sky Telescope in like 1990, and both of those were on a page facing each other, and I thought, wait a minute. If you take this and you put that together, and I came and told Terry Dickinson, nah, no, never, nothing will ever replace film. We had that ongoing argument for almost 20 years. And every year I'd say, we're getting closer. And then it was CCD, and then CMOS replaced CCD, but the third part of the puzzle was ASCOM. Now we had a language that we could, this gear would talk to each other. So it was go-to scopes, digital cameras, and a language that your computer could use. The first shots were not, but they were still something. If you took that shot in 1990-something with your ST4 or the later color, you'd be very impressed. And as things came along in the 90s, we started to see more advanced digital cameras. We still had, in fact, then people like Stellacam and our friend Rock Mallon came along with video. So it was a video camera that you plugged into a television. We used to call it video astronomy. Many people's fancy word. Yes. Yeah, round of applause for Rock. Yeah. We used to call it video astronomy. Now they call it electronically assisted astronomy. That's the caveat. And you would get real time. And people, I was talking to a gentleman tomorrow, he said, I'm not ready for astronomy, for doing a lot of stuff. And I said, just plug a camera in. And now, of course, you can plug it into your computer. But back in those times, we were doing that. In the last couple of decades, again, mounts tracking improved. The digital cameras evolved. You can now even use your phone to take pictures. Then again, CMOS came along. A lot more sensitive and faster than CCD, lower priced, available in, and then the cooled, of course, available in mono or color, and this is where we are now, of course. Light pollution got worse as we got better, and cameras got better, but then filters got better. It's a constant race against each other, and the filters today really are great. I see fantastic images from downtown cities in Border Lakes with filters. They're just mind-blowing. You say, how are they doing it? Connectivity. Of course, now we have ASI Air is all the rage, and mini computers. So again, connectivity, power control, excuse me, power control, do control our great friend Jim Kendrick. With his professional, I use all his products, top of the line. You gotta have Kendrick. So, software evolved, and I just put down a few. Look at the stuff we've got. Half this stuff is free. Of course, an all-time favorite for a lot of guys is PhD. I love PhD. And by the way, look at that. Look at that line. I took that last summer. Now, you can't tell it from here, but I'm cheating. See that it says 16? If I turn that to 1, it looks like a seismograph. But I wanted to, and I put that online just to see if anybody called me out. Nobody called me out. I'm like, come on. Nobody gets tracking that good. But I get pretty good tracking. I've got an EQ8 RH PhD 2. Phone apps, of course. Who doesn't use your phone apps for astrophotography? You're probably using them today to find out what the weather was going to be tonight. It's going to be clear. Dress warmly. Forums. Hey, how about forums? I don't know about you, but for any product I buy, I just find their forum. Find their forum. I got a problem. Gary Bennett was at my house. We plugged in my EQ8 RH. Couldn't wait. It had been sitting in a box since winter. It was July. Turned it on. It screamed. It screamed. The worm gear was it had to be adjusted. But I mean, this thing screamed. And I thought, oh, there goes my summer. I'm going to have to ship this thing back. I joined the EQ8 forum. I said, I just fired mine up for the first time. I pressed home, and it screamed. And they said, oh, it's just your worm gear adjustment. And it took Gary and it took longer to take the cowling off than it did to make the adjustment. I haven't adjusted now in 3 years. So we had forums, online tutorials. Our great friends, Trevor, Sean's here somewhere, I think. Visible Dark, of course, Ron Breacher with Astro Dark. One of my favorite guys in England, Luke Amatico. Now we've got all this stuff that will teach you all about, and in Trevor's case, it's all encompassing. In Sean's case, we're looking at, and to some great degree, Ron we're looking at PICS Insight and processing. That's what they're all about, as is Luke, and they'll talk about other things as well. I highly recommend all of them. Trevor's right here, Sean's around somewhere, Ron's around somewhere. And here's another thing, talking about a hotbed and Ontario. Where are all these guys from? It's Ontario. We got observatory makers, we got Rock Mountain, we got Jim Kendrick, we've got Chivallo. For some reason, again, per capita, there's probably more astronomy, more manufacturers, more influencers than anywhere in the world, right here in Ontario. And it's not like it's Arizona. We got 300 days of sunshine. You know, I don't know why it is. Dan Higgins, right there. I want to point out, Dan, Astro World, you've got to watch this show. It's free. You don't have to pay a cent. Every Wednesday, Friday night on YouTube. It's all about imaging, processing, you name it. Filters. This is Malcolm Park, our organizer. Last Wednesday, Dan, his partner Eric, Dan's in Long Island, Eric's in Chicago. Dan would get a pod, but he's in Border Lake. I keep trying to get him to move into the outback, upstate. But Wednesdays, 9 o'clock, right? 9 o'clock Wednesdays and Fridays. Fridays, beginner's night. So if you're just getting started out, perfect night. And Sean, again, Nielsen from Visible Dark, he's very often a co-host. He'll be on there. When I can, I do the chat. I type stuff. I bug them. Hey, what about this? What about that? So these resources are, again, no cost to you, and they're fantastic resources. And these are things that we have now that have never been here before. So don't forget, Astro World TV, and again, Astro Backyard, Trevor, and the other guys. And of course, what do we do with all this? Well, I just wanted to quickly, I know the quality won't be the same as I'm seeing, but this is a zoom in. I did a 9-minute shot of the Eastern Veil, 1-shot color camera. I spent, it used to be, Pixel Sight would take you years if you ever learned it. I spent one night with Sean's tutorial. His tutorial video is the only one he charges for. He charges very little. I followed along, and from Friday at 9 o'clock, by midnight on that same Friday, I could process an image, and I knew my way around the GUI. So do take advantage of all those things if you really want to get into this. And I know a lot of you already are, but for those of you who are starting out, take advantage of all these fantastic resources that we have access to that in the past didn't exist. And Dan and I were having this conversation yesterday. Now that this has all come along, of course, the question for those of you getting started, mono, and I'm just going to leave that for another speaker to talk about. For me, I'll say this: I got a fast scope. I live in a Bortle 4, so a rather low Bortle. I don't have a lot of time, so for me, OSC works. For others, for instance, Dan, who's got a small refractor because he's again in a very high Bortle, he finds that the mono's better for him. So it really depends on the scope you're using, where you live. If you're retired or not, got a lot of time on your hands. I always say, most of my friends who have mono, see, I'm going to get started now. They got a lot of data lying around. They haven't processed yet. Mine gets shot one night, processed the next day, and posted the next night. So again, some of the things that now. So here's the monitor. Here's Chuck Bolger, who may be around here as well. He's near here. This is sort of the modern astronomer now compared to that guy. And some people, I tell you, they really take advantage. This is one of our owners in Pennsylvania. He's got, I don't know if they're Red Cats, they're the Williams Optics, something. He's got about 5, 6 cameras on there. He's got an 8-inch in the middle. Again, now I will say this, he collects a lot of data. I don't see a lot of processed stuff, but he has a lot of data. You know, so I go back to our friend from 1906 and imagine what he'd think of today. If I could show him this, I was showing you this yesterday, Trevor, this 90-minute shot, and this is a crop. I think I've got the whole thing later. It's a crop. I go out to my backyard, I fire up, I take this, I process it. The next night, it's ready to hang on the wall. And if that's what you want to do, you can get there, and today easier than ever. And of course, the age-old question, does size matter? No, size doesn't really matter. Turns out it doesn't after all. If you've got enough time, you can do amazing things. Look at this. These are all 51 millimeter, 61 millimeter, 71 millimeter, 81 millimeter WO stuff. Now, it might have taken 17, 20 hours and 4 or 5 nights, but it can be done. So you don't so much got to have that to do this. And speaking of that, we haven't lost our old friends. The newts are great for astronomy. A lot of guys, Ron Breacher, I think, was using the newt there for years, does amazing stuff. The refractor is still in the mix and being used heavily. In fact, I'd say more people use refractors for astronomy than anything else. Now we're on, what's next? Well, now we've got harmonic drives. That seems to be the rage. We've started to we make piers as well. We make a lot of piers. We make hundreds of piers a year, and each is custom made for the mount or whatever. And now we're starting to make them for these mounts. And again, as I wanted to mention, we have the ability that we didn't have before. I call it the fast lane. And you can either go with an astrograph, which again is a telescope designed for astrophotography. There's no rear eyepiece hole. And I again got one of these ready to go, and I see amazing things done on the RASes. You got to know how to set them up. They're not like used same night out of the box. You got to buy a tilt plate and stuff. And of course, I already had an HD, an Edge 14 at f11. So, and I was already using the reducer, and I still couldn't get the stuff. So I went for the Hyperstar, and of course that opened up a whole new world. Hyperstar, for those of you who don't know, it turns your f11 in this case into an f1.9. So it makes it a very fast. As Robin, I can't remember his last name, who the creator of SharpCap always likes to say, photons fall at the same rate. And again, I'm not going to get too technical. It's like falling rain. You can't speed that up. But what you can do is speed up your sensitivity or boost your sensitivity. And that's what we're doing here. We're widening the field and really boosting our sensitivity. So for me, today, the combination of CMOS, hyperstar tracking, filters, as Banyan says, that's gold, Jerry, that's gold. And it is. We can do things now. This is looking down when I first put mine. So this is looking down the front end of my telescope. Again, for the uninitiated in hyperstars. This is when I was setting it up. We covered this with the dew cap. This is what we cover, of course, still with the dew cap, so it isn't exposed. And it is highly sensitive to light. In fact, we put electrical tape over the LEDs at the end of our cameras because that will flood the frame with red. They're just that sensitive to light. Again, typical hyperstar setup without a dew cap. There's a RASA with the dew cap, so you're not seeing the camera in here, and of course you don't see an eyepiece because there is no place for an eyepiece or such. And again, all of those of you know all this, but for those of you who are getting into it, it'll give you an idea of where we are. And again, I've gone through a lot of the main Sharpless catalog, the big nebulae. So this year I want to do, for the year we've had between smoke and clouds and so on. But again, I get instant access. So when it is clear, in 10 minutes I can be out observing. And so I wanted to go for some of the lesser known objects. This is SH-114. Its in Cygnus is often missed because when you look at it live, there's a hint of red. That's about it. It takes today's processing, pixel sight, etc., and your way around it to be able to image it. But what's interesting here is I'm in a Bortle 4 with a 14-inch edge, and that's 55 2-minute subs. One of our pod owners out in Seattle, who's in a Bortle 8, he has an edge 8 with a hyperstar. And he said, I've never heard of this. And a lot of guys said to me, I've never heard of the Flying Dragon. And I said, well, check it out, where it's S114 SH. And the next 2 nights, he imaged it. Now this is 246, so 5 times as long from a very highly light polluted area with an 8-inch. And if you go back and forth, I mean, he got some stuff. It's not going to show up there like it shows up here and online, but it just shows you that you don't have to have perfectly dark skies, you don't have to have a giant scope. The stuff can be done. And I added one, of course I love starless stuff, I can't help it. Ron Breacher, see, I call him Starman because he does the most beautiful stars. I do the ugliest stars. I don't take any time to do my stars. It's like, get the stars out of the way, I'm trying to shoot the nebula. But you gotta have stars in there. So we keep the stars, but now we have, of course, as part of a side effect from our processing in most cases, we end up with a starless image. And they're fun because they do help you bring stuff out. So I'm going to keep moving here. In summation, this is the golden age of backyard astronomy. Take advantage of it. You can get into it for less than you ever could before. Go out and buy a Red Cat or something, or small scope. Go to Trevor's channel, learn all about astrophotography. Go to Sean's channel, learn all about how to process it. Go to Dan's channel, get in on the mix. And so get out there and explore. And Gary Bennett, my friend Gary Bennett, always loves to say, and I want to point those guys out at the end as well. He always calls it eye candy. So just for those of you who are here for the pretty pictures, I'm just going to go through a few. This gives you an idea of what we can do today. These are 90-minute shots for the most part. So 45. I do 2-minute subs. But these are just an idea of what you can do. I've been doing different forms of astrophotography, but dedicated deep sky stuff. This is my 3rd season. You don't have to, and it's because of these guys that they bring you up to speed real quick. You can very quickly be doing really good stuff. And again, just showing you a little bit to show you what I get in my backyard with my 14-inch scope. And filters, it's all there. Trick, I didn't use noise reduction. So you don't wipe out all, because M33 is, what, 2-3 billion stars, and you use noise reduction and you get rid of, you go for the pretty hydrogen alpha, you don't realize that's all stars. So I figured, what the heck, get stars. From a Bortle 4, you can get stuff like that. It's a 90-minute shot of the squid and flying bat. I was amazed that I got that much, but I got to tell you, it took every trick in the book with PixInsight to draw that out, because that's not enough is this WR34 maybe? Is it? Yeah? Again, 90 minutes. You couldn't do this even 5 years. You couldn't do this with a CCD in a couple hours. You just couldn't do this stuff. I go for more obscure ones. Somebody will know the number. I forget. One of my favorites is, this is just broadband. And of course, one of the tricks we have now, for those of us who would like to see SHO and HOO without doing the laborious mono stuff, now we can, a few buttons, and we can do that. And, do that. And we get our SHO. And again, just showing you some of the stuff as we come to the end here that you can do before too long, whether you're in the city or in the country, the right filters, the right stuff. You can bring it all together. A natural light. This is the one I want to shoot next. This was a full moon night. So we could shoot with full moon. I was surprised. I have a little lightness at the corners that I just couldn't gradient get rid of. But again, going with the false. This was all last summer stuff, doing the Cygnus walls, zooming in a bit, give you a better idea. Even the Pelican, a fake HOO. Am I doing that wrong? SHO? Yeah, HO. Sorry, this is SHO. It's not really. It's this with a couple of buttons, and you get that. Just flipping through these really quickly, just to give you an idea of the heart. I'm looking forward to the RAS 11 because I'll be able to get more of things instead of sort of 3/4 of them. So I'm really looking forward to that, having a little bit wider field of view. And again, zooming in on these, this is from this season through smoke at the beginning of the season, so we're shooting through smoke to clamshell. Again, I'm going for the sort of offbeat, off-track ones, a natural broadband of it, starless because I had to, to help. A bit of an extreme iris from the spring, and again, all these tools. I shoot one night. As some of you know me, I'm quite a night owl. I'll shoot to 1 or 2 in the morning and post these on Facebook at dawn because the processing's so fast. As you guys know, if you use Bill Blanchard's tools and his scripts and Russ's RC Astro's tools, after you take the stars out and you stretch it, you can't say, well, I think I'm done. It's all there, and then it's just playing around. Again, from this season, a couple months ago, and I was able to get the Cygnus loop in there even. The stuff you can do now, when I think back to the decades of doing this, a cave from earlier, a cave and natural, wizard, HOO, starless, of course, you know what I mean. Galaxies, they're all there for you to get a hold of, and you don't need to spend years and years on it. It's easier than ever. This is kind of funny. I put this one. Now again, there's a little caveat. You can zoom in on that thing. It's like 40 feet by 40 feet. It's like, it's huge. When you put them that size, yeah, they look kind of the same, but you can't zoom in on mine like you can zoom in on theirs. You zoom in on theirs, and it's the real deal. It's really there. Again, we've got, and I just threw these in at the end just to give you an idea over the last couple of seasons. And I wanted you at least to know that, have some idea that I think I know what I'm talking about. And I'll just very quickly go through these. I'm almost there. And again, this season, my first, because I'm usually too late. I mothball everything for the winter. Coming off Lake Huron, we get blizzards all winter. I found that I got out 3, 4, 5 times a winter, and I kept everything primed just for that. So I started actually mothballing I leave my gear and stuff ready to go just in case we get a week that's really good. But for the most part, I mothball, and then I'm trying to get out there in April, and of course, April showers bring flowers. But this year I did get, and you won't see the details and stuff, but I got a nice return, again, 90 minutes. And as I mentioned, some of these you don't see very often. Propeller, I got this a month ago through smoke. I gave it a bit of a twist with no stars. 3 weeks ago, I really wanted to go for the cocoon because I had done the cocoon at f11, but I wanted to do it wide angle. And again, I'm going for the sort of off the beaten trail to some. And I've seen some beautiful shots of it where you don't just see the cocoon, you see more stuff. The first night I shot it, it was very heavy smoke. End of July. It was heavy smoke, there was clouds, about 5% clouds, and I actually kind of used the wrong filter. because it's a reflection emission nebula, and I thought, well, probably I'll go for the like the iris. I thought I'll go for the reflection. I'll probably get more stuff. But I actually had my IDAS NVZ filter in the emission filter that really pulls out the hydrogen. And I got this, and I was trying, the reason it's off center is I was trying to get some of the tail stuff. And so even through smoke, through clouds, 90 minutes, the right filter, I was able to get this. Now, Wednesday night of this week, as you know, it was clear. So I was determined to try it again with broadband, and I did. You won't be able to see the nuances of it like I can see here, and I posted it on our Facebook page. But once again, broadband, 90 minutes, OSC. 10 years ago, this didn't exist. I don't think you could do this 10 years ago with a CCD camera. And well, this one was actually 2 hours and 40 minutes. I was able to get to go from like 10 till whenever the other night. And I'm going to move on. I'm happy with that. That's as much as I expect to get from. And somebody said to me, what are those blue things? And I said, I'm not a professional astronomer. I just take pictures of this stuff. It's oxygen of some type. It's, ask a scientist. And interestingly, again, heavy smoke. Remember at the beginning of summer, it was galaxy season, I wanted to get something of this. You won't see again up here what I'm seeing, but I should have actually got you to kill that light. But again, the stuff you can do, I even got, does anybody know the name of this?
Integrated flux nebula.
What is it?
Integrated flux.
Okay, thank you. I never would have remembered that. That dust and supposedly goes, I don't know how long, it's between the two of them and so on. So, my last slide. Are you? I hope you are, because this is the golden age, and I'm at the end, and thank you, and I'll leave you with that. We do have, if anybody wants to stick around, we don't have to do it up here if you want to talk to us. Gary Bennett's right there, Bart's right there. We're the guys who design these observatories and things. If you've got questions for us, if you didn't see us yesterday at our open house, you've got more. But I hope you all get some clear skies tonight. Maybe get a nap because it's going to be late, and then do the same tomorrow. Clear skies to all.
Thank you, Rick.